Come on. Hey, listen, I had my sweatshirt on today trying to manifest some fall. All I ended up doing was sweating in this office. Let me tell you, woof. I'm ready for some fall. You're good. I'm going to go right on in. Zach, appreciate you. Well, tonight, Pastor Jeremy said it. We're going to start a new series. Before we do that, shameless plug. We got a preview service this Saturday for Hendersonville at our Hendersonville campus. And so come on. So maybe the Lord is tugging on you, or you're trying to process, is he tugging on me, leading me that way? I just want to encourage you, come check it out. Listen, if you show up, it's not a commitment, right? I'm not making you sign your name on the dotted line. As much as I would like for you to, I'm not asking you to do that, right? But come check it out, pray about it, and just listen to what the Lord would have for you. But I will be honest, I'm fired up, all right? We are 21 Sundays away from launching, and what a dream come true, and so I'm excited. But tonight I want to preach out of the Old Testament. Has anybody ever watched Star Wars in this house? Right? Where are my OG trilogy people at, right? That would be 4, 5, and 6, right? They used to not have numbers. They used to just be A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi. It took me my brain a second. Then we added the prequels. Does anybody like the prequels in here? Come on, I'll be honest, the prequels are pretty good. They got a lot of hate when they came out because they weren't as good as the OG, right? The nostalgia of the OG held people back. But I'll be honest, they're pretty good. Tonight we're going to be in the OG, all right? We're going to be in the Old Testament, but we're going to be in the OG of the OG. All right, listen, I know the New Testament's good. Most people, when they get saved, they jump right in the New Testament, think it's great. But you don't get the New Testament without the Old Testament. You don't get the full picture of the promise without the beginning. And so tonight we're going to start a series called Origins, and we're going to be working through the book of Genesis. A couple months ago, Pastor Jeremy was preaching in the Set the Atmosphere series, and he touched on Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. And I'm going to, here in just a moment, give you a little survey, Bible nerd out on you on Genesis, and then we're going to get into the story of Cain and Abel, which are the kids of Adam and Eve. Come on, didn't you just feel the electricity in the room when I said that? Right, we're going to talk about miracles, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what you're hoping for. I said Cain and Abel. He's like, murder. Great. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no good way to ease into it, you know what I mean? But I have gotten to this place in my life where I love the book of Genesis. I don't know, just something about it. Something about the OG text. It feels good. I enjoy reading it. It's kind of action-packed. You kind of don't know what's going to happen next. Then it happens, and you're kind of shocked, you know. I'm talking like Leah and Rachel kind of stuff. You're like, well, wait a second. You know what I'm saying? But it's so good to me, and I enjoy it. But I just want to give you a little bit of context about the book of Genesis. Because if you just read it at face value, you will probably end up just a little on the confused side. Or you'll end up at a place wondering, you know, what does this really matter to me, right? I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate my life. I'm just trying to figure out how to live every day for Jesus. What does Genesis mean for me? So I want to get into that, but just want to give you a little backstory. The author of Genesis is Moses. Come on, it's one of the biggest figures in the Bible. Moses, he leads the Israelites out of captivity. And Moses wrote the book of Genesis to the Israelites, to the people of Israel, to the people of God while they were out in the wilderness. So for 40 years, they get rescued out of Egypt by God. They send the plagues. Come on, I mean, Prince of Egypt. Back in fine arts days, I played Pharaoh in Prince of Egypt. Like, unbelievable, all right? I was the meanest looking Pharaoh ever. I made Pharaoh look soft. I mean, I was mean mugging everybody while we were in it. And so I was out there hoping the plagues wouldn't touch me, you know? And so Prince of Egypt, you know, all that good stuff happens. And so then they go out into the wilderness, and Moses receives a download from God on the mountain. And we get what is called the Pentateuch, right? The first 5 books of the Bible, and Genesis is the first one that we get. And so I just want to give you some important context. The word Genesis means origin. It means the beginning. So, I mean, that's revolutionary right there, right? It literally means origin. But it's important for us to understand the literary style of Genesis, and you'll understand why in just a minute. But the literary style of Genesis is actually called prose narrative. It's called a prose narrative, and this is what it means. It details actions and events of the past. However, Genesis is unique with this narrative because it actually weaves into the stories mythological and poetic elements. What Moses did when he constructed the book of Genesis was he actually pulled from different things in the culture that was around them to write the book. So that when people all around would have read it, they would have recognized symbols and signs. They would have recognized certain language that was being used, and it would have meant something to them, right? In English, most of our words just mean what they are, right? But when you look at the original language, there could be multiple meanings, and depending on the phrasing it's used in, it could totally change the way that you look at a word. And so it's fascinating because he would actually incorporate even things from other religions. He would pull from things all around them so that people could understand the point that he was trying to get across. So when we open the book of Genesis and we start in chapter 1, we find God making the earth. Let there be light, right? Classic illustration, flip the light switch on, boom, there it goes. I mean, Big Bang Theory right there. You know what I'm saying? But he creates something out of nothing, out of void. And then we see that after he does this, he separates night and day into separate things. And then land and sea begin to get separated. And then we find that God creates vegetation. And he creates vegetation so it'll reproduce itself, that it'll have seed that drops into the earth and creates more vegetation. And then he creates the birds of the air and the creatures of the sea, of the water. And then we find that he has the land produce living creatures. Isn't that fascinating? Out of the land, he created living creatures. And then right at the end of Genesis 1, he creates mankind. But mankind is the only thing that he makes in his image, because we are image bearers of a God who reigns above everything. But here's what I love about Genesis 1, and this is like the ultimate Bible nerd in me. The way that he wrote Genesis 1, when they would have read it, it actually was the same creation account from multiple religions of the days. It is not a unique account, except for there's one detail. All of the phrasing he uses for things like water, things like the land and the wild, he uses phrases like the beast of the field. All of these things to the original audience would have meant one thing: absolute chaos. They would have read it and recognized that means it's out of control. There is no order there. And the thing that's different when you look at ours and the other religions is other religions, their gods, little g, were actually controlled by the chaos. The chaos would subdue the gods. They would not be able to overcome it. So when they would have read the book of Genesis in the original context, they would have watched one difference: that this God that created everything, he was not like the other gods, because he is the only God that is not subdued by chaos. He is the only God that looks at chaos and brings order to it. He's the only God that looks at what nobody else can take a hold of, and he lays a hold of it and he puts it right the way it should be. He's not like other gods. And they would have read this and recognized, okay, there's something different here. There's something different about this God that they call Yahweh. There's something different about this Elohim. There's something different. He's not like these other religions. And it would pique a curiosity in people. But I find it fascinating just the way that he used words and different phrases to pull people in. You've got the waters. It's chaotic. You've got a serpent in chapter 2 or chapter 3, which would have meant chaos as well. You've got things like the beast of the field, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit. But I just find it fascinating that he pulled people in to show them this God is not like that. But this God is significantly better. And what he has for you, I've come to tell you tonight, is so much better than what you could ever dream of. And whatever you feel like is chaos and chaotic in your life, what you feel like has no order, we serve a God who can come in and bring order to it. And he gives you the power. He gives you the authority to come in and create order and to bring balance to what's going on around you. And so then we get into Genesis 2. And in Genesis 2, it's almost like a zoom in of God creating mankind. And we find that he makes Adam out of the dust. And he gives Adam power and he gives him authority and he wants him to name the animals. And Adam, he starts out super fantastic with these really long names I can't pronounce, right? The dinosaur names. And then he gets into fly. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just got bored. I mean, I would have done the same thing. I mean, I guess he got bored enough that God was like, it ain't good for him to be alone. We're gonna have to do something here, right? We're gonna have to fix this. And so he creates Eve out of the rib bone of Adam. And I mean, Sydney is my rib bone, you know what I'm saying? I had to have her because I get bored. And she keeps me in line. She keeps my chaos in order, you know what I mean? And so I find it fascinating how intentional God is with his creation. The Bible says that in the cool of the day, God would come down and he would walk with them in the garden. You weren't made to be separated from God, but you were made to commune with him. You were made to have conversation with him. You were made to walk with him, to talk with him, to spend time with him. But in Genesis 3, we see a thing that we all judge very harshly, right? We see the fall of man. And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, we're introduced to the serpent. And here's what it says about the serpent when it introduces him. It says that the serpent was more crafty than any of the other beasts of the field. It's fascinating. He pulls the language back in to what he's been saying repeatedly through the last couple of chapters. He wanted to establish a link between the field and this beast. And so when we hit Genesis chapter 3, we have already hit 4 different references of the beast of the field. He says it in Genesis 1:25, he says it in Genesis 1:30, and in Genesis 1:30, he actually establishes man as the authority over the beast of the field. We find it in Genesis 2:19. Genesis 2:20 says it as well, and then Genesis 3, we find it capped off with the serpent is the most crafty of all the beast of the field. As we move into chapter 4, when you look at chapter 3 is the root of sin. It's the fall of man. It is the temptation of Eve grabbing the fruit and sharing it with Adam. It's the separation of what was the promise. It's the separation of what was unrestrained pleasure and finding ourselves at a place where sin has now corrupted us. So Genesis 3 is the root of sin, but tonight we're going to talk about Genesis 4. Genesis 4 is the fruit of sin. You've got the root that takes place in chapter 3, but you don't really see the maturity of the sin until we hit chapter 4. And there's a span of time in between, but I think you'll notice when we read this chapter here in just a moment, the parallels of what we've been talking about that Moses has been weaving in. So here's what it says. Genesis chapter 4, if you're taking notes, Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, and we're going to read through 16. Listen, I like to read a lot of Bible, so just buckle in. I'll be as clear as mud, as Pastor Jeremy says sometimes, right? Clear as mud. Here we go. It says, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, ... You know what I'm saying? If you don't know what that word means, Google it, right? Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was the keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. In verse 6, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, and you must rule over it. Verse 8, Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? Right, anybody got kids and one kid's real quiet and you ask, where's the other one? Right, we asked Lucy that, where's Lola? Because it's quiet in the house, right? Where is Abel your brother? He said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of the Eden. Lord, I just thank you for your word. And Lord, I thank you that every detail to you matters. Because Lord, throughout all of time, your goal has been to get our attention so that we could just look at you. So Lord, I just thank you the way you care for us. And it's in Jesus' name, amen. I love that the story starts with an offering, right? It starts with an offering. It said that in verse 3 that over the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel brought a offering of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. I mean, the word fat portions there is fascinating, right? Have you ever cut a big slab of meat? I mean, the whole thing of it's fat on the back. And I'll be honest, I love some steak and it grosses me out. You know what I'm saying? But there's something about the fat that is the best quality for God. You know, he wanted the fat portions, and that's what Abel brought to him. If you're taking notes tonight, I want you to write this down. What we bring doesn't carry as much weight as how we bring it. What we bring doesn't carry as much weight as to how we bring it. And then right under that, I want you to write, my response reveals my heart. My response reveals my heart. You know, I wonder for my own life, how many things I'm still waiting on because I don't have the right heart. I wonder how many things I've not laid a hold of because maybe my heart isn't postured in the right way to receive it. I wonder how many pieces of land and how much territory God is waiting on me to take, but maybe my heart isn't in the right place to take it. I wonder how many things in my life God is holding out, hoping I will lay a hold of it, but my heart is not postured in a way that I could actually receive it the way he intended for me. That's what I find fascinating about Cain. Cain did bring an offering, but his heart wasn't postured in the right thing. And I've come to encourage somebody, God is not withholding anything from you. But maybe we're just not in the right posture to receive it in its fullness. You know, we can give the most in an offering. You could give enough to pay off the entire church. You could be the most generous person with your time. You could outserve everybody in here, right? You could be the hardest worker in the Cafe Nash. You could be the hardest working usher. You're running buckets like it's the Olympics. You could be the best person when it comes to giving of everything in your life. You could be the most generous with your time, your talent, everything that you have. You could be the best pro presenter operator. But if you don't have the right heart posture, You know, we can give and we can give and we can give, but if our heart is not in the right place, we're not gonna actually get anywhere with it. I wanna encourage you tonight, make sure your heart is in the right place. When it comes to giving, make sure your heart is in the right place. Here's what I love. God told Samuel when he was picking a king that we were focused on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. To everyone around us, it looks like we're sowing and sowing and sowing and sowing, but God's not impressed with that. God looks at our heart. He looks at the motives of our heart and what's in us. And when you look at the word regard that he used, it said that God had regard for Abel and he had no regard for Cain. The word regard there, now I'm gonna give you the Southern Hick version of it, is shawal, right? That sounds like an Indian name. Sounds like something that you would read in a history textbook, shawal. But shawal is a very unique word, and here it means that he looked favorably upon. But when you really study the word here, it actually means to gaze at something. It means to fix your eyes upon a thing, to stare intently through something. And in this particular word in the Hebrew is used 15 times between Genesis and the book of Isaiah. And every time it's mentioned, it has one of three purposes. The first one is it usually means worship. Another one is it means a covenant loyalty that one has. And then the other one is that it is a prophetic hope that we have. So here in this text, when this word pops up, it actually means a bend towards worship. You know, here at Cornerstone, one of our core values is that we're biblically mature. And so as biblically mature Christians, here's something that we understand. Everything I do is worship. Everything I do with my life is an act of worship to God. Every time I give, it's worship. Every time I serve, it's worship. Every time I wake up on time to make it to my job, it is worship. Every time I decide to parent, it's worship. Every day as a husband, it's worship. Everything in our life is worship. But we only get to that revelation when we posture our heart in such a way that we recognize everything I'm doing is for him. Everything I'm doing is unto him. So if I'm giving of my best like Abel, I want to make sure my heart is postured in the way that it's the best I have. Because I understand it's an act of worship for me. It's not an act of sacrifice. It's not an act of, well, this is all I have left over. It's an act of, this is the very best that I can muster up. You know, could it have been that Abel was choosing to worship and Cain was choosing to work? That Abel was postured to worship God while Cain was just too busy working the ground. I think it's a perspective shift that we have to have where we have to stop looking at everything just as they simply are, and we have to recognize the worship in everything we do. We have to recognize that. But man, does God's response speak volumes? Here's what it says in verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, and you must rule over it." If you're taking notes tonight, I want you to write this down. Sin is not your friend. Sin is not your friend. And when I say it, it almost feels very elementary, like, oh, well, of course. But I think we live in one of the biggest issues that's facing us in this day is that we've become very casual with sin. Culture has created this idea around sin of, well, it's not that bad. Or we'll have thoughts creep in our mind, well, everybody else is doing that. It's not as bad as maybe what that person did. You know, in some ways, it's kind of become cute. Or at least that's what culture wants to tell you. I used to get this one all the time as a youth pastor. Oh, they're just sowing their wild oats. We've tried to find ways to reframe it so it doesn't sound as bad, but sin is not our friend. Sin does not have our best intention at heart. It doesn't want you to succeed. It doesn't want you to thrive. It wants to take you out. Here's what Paul told the church in Corinth. Listen, we get icky about calling sin out or addressing it, but here's what Paul told the church in Corinth. There was a man in the church in Corinth that was sleeping with his stepmom. And Paul said, take that one and hand him over to Satan. Because a little yeast affects the whole batch. Deal with this issue or it'll deal with all of you. Either address this or it's going to address all of you. Either handle this or it's about to handle you. Either take rule and reign over this or it's going to rule and reign over you. Because we have to notice the way that God approached Cain here. He said, sin is crouching at the door and its desire is for you. This phrasing here for you, what it means is it is in motion towards you. It actually means it is in full pursuit of you. That this sin that's crouching, it's not just sitting there waiting for you to look its direction, but it's actually running towards you. And it's hoping to catch up to you and to get you. But Moses would have brought this language in to bring an understanding. If you're not careful, the thing that you were created to rule over will then become your predator and you'll become its prey. The thing you were created to have dominion over and control over, if you're not careful with it, it will become the thing that hunts you down. And when it hunts you down, it's not coming to be buddies with you. It's hunting you down to take you out and to take out the promise that is on your life. What is sin's objective? The Bible says it's to steal, kill, and destroy. But it's cute. He's clear. It's crouching at the door. It's a predatory language and warning. If you're not careful, it's coming for you. If you're not cautious about what you're doing, if you're not careful at what your eyes see, if you're not careful about what comes out of your mouth, it is waiting for you. We have to be guarded against it. It is not fun to play with. It is wanting to devour you. And here's what it goes on to say. Verse 8, Cain spoke to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. One translation he says that Cain says, hey, let us go out to the field. If you remember when I was giving you a little context, the word field there is a symbol for chaos. But the way that Moses wrote about the field was he wanted by the time you got here, after seeing the 5 other references of the field, that your immediate response is, where's the beast? If he's in the field, there's gotta be a beast somewhere. If Cain has taken Abel out to the field, there's a beast lurking around a corner. Where is the beast at? I mean, it was to captivate the reader, to immediately start looking. I found the breadcrumb. Where's it at? And then you find it. Cain kills Abel. Here's what happened. Cain in his anger actually partnered with the serpent. You see, when we decide to sin, because ultimately it is a choice for us, we are actually forming a partnership with the serpent. And in our sin, we are choosing to partner with darkness. When we decide, I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna participate in this, or I'm gonna think this way, when we choose to sin, we are forming an alliance with the one who sought to destroy us. We are forming a partnership with the one who doesn't want us to succeed. It would be like forming a partnership with your arch nemesis that you had in high school, right? You had one. You thought of him right then when I said it. You're like, John, right? But we're forming this partnership, but I find the response of Cain even more interesting because it actually parallels the response of his parents. God comes to Cain and he says, where is Abel, your brother? When Adam and Eve sinned, he went into the garden and he said, where are you? Then he says to Cain, what have you done? God's response to Eve was, what have you done? And it's this tying together of the two narratives so that you would pay attention to the way God operates in this, to the way that God responds. And I don't know how you read the Bible. I don't know how you interpret. The way I talk to you is the way I talk to myself, right? So when I read the Bible, my first question is, God, how in the world could they do that? How could you lie to God? How could you possibly do that? Well, the thing for Cain was Cain had now become desensitized to sin. And the desensitization of sin in his life had actually led him to a place where he could not feel conviction. That's what it does. When sin enters our life, it desensitizes us to the conviction of the Holy Spirit. It desensitizes us to feel the pull of God, to pull us away from those things. I mean, he did murder. What's a little lie at that point? He did take a life. What's a fib, as my grandma used to say? It desensitized and pulled him away. And it feels so extreme, but for my own life, does anybody in here cuss? I'm just kidding, don't put your hand up. All right, some of you are like, ugh. Now, to my knowledge, my kids don't cuss. I would hope not, right? 3 and 2. If they were walking around my house cussing, I would probably resign my job. You know what I'm saying? Like terrible parenting 101 right there. Now, I married somebody who, to my knowledge, has never cussed. I actually fact-checked this last night because I was making sure I didn't get up here and lie. You know what I'm saying? So she's cooking dinner last night, and I was like, have you ever cussed? Have you ever said a cuss word? Because I just want to be sure. Because for me, I did not grow up in church. So you can fill in as many blanks as you want to, but I was a piece of work. Like capital W, work. And when I got saved, I had no grid for this. So like I was praying in the locker room and cussing in my prayer. I didn't know. I decided to get baptized. I celebrated with a cuss word. I had no grid for this. It was what I grew up in. I didn't know. Everyone around me cussed. And it was this point in my life where I cussed so much, everyone around me cussed so much, I didn't even notice when it was happening. I didn't even notice if it left my mouth. The day I noticed was when she was in the car with me and I rattled it off to somebody. And her only comment was, I can't believe you just spoke like that in front of me. I had been saved for 5 months. I was a piece of work. Piece of work. It was January 10th, 2014. I could take you to the Walton Ferry Road, right by the nature habitat in Hendersonville is where she said it to me. That was the last time I ever said a cuss word. Just side note, soapbox. Cussing's a choice. If you wanted to stop, you'd stop. You know, there's something to be said about somebody that makes up their mind to be done with something. I decided that day I was embarrassed, but I was also convicted by the Holy Spirit. And I made my mind up, I won't ever say that word again. Matter of fact, I won't say any of them again. And I have not, and it's not been a struggle. Because a mind-made up person doesn't care what everybody else is doing. It's for me and what I want to do. I'm not going to say that again. It's not worth it for me. Done with my soapbox. Except for the fact, we sit under a pastor whose vocabulary is fantastic. He doesn't just say accoutrements, he can spell it. He uses words in the podcast. I'm lost. I'm trying to find a response, but I don't know the word, and the context clues didn't help me. You know what I'm saying? But if the best we can do is 4 letters, we have a whole separate issue. If the best thing that I can come up with is 4 words to describe how I'm feeling, I really should probably open a thesaurus and expand my horizons on life. Because there's a lot more descriptive words. But the thing about cussing was I was so familiar with it, I had become desensitized to it. And now, it will strike, like it's striking to hear someone cuss. Listen, I'm making people feel convicted. They're like, did I cuss today? Did I say something? Cindy and I were watching a show the other night, and our girls are in the room, and everything is normal until the F-bomb hit the TV. And I hit all-out panic mode. They're like, cut it off, we're done. I'm like scrambling to find one of the 6 remotes laying around on the couch, panicking. But it was so jarring to me because we don't talk like that. I don't want people around my kids talking like that. And so it was jarring. But when we're constantly surrounded by something, we are constantly desensitized by that thing. And when we're constantly desensitized by our sin, we have no conviction. We won't feel the voice of the Holy Spirit trying to pull us back from something. And I know that in our human mind, we look at this example of Cain and we're like, well, he murdered. How terrible. Adam and Eve, they ruined it all for all of us. Of course they lied. Of course they chose to lie to God. But when you look in the New Testament, there's a character named Judas. Judas was so bad, none of us name our kids that. That's bad. I ruined it for everyone. If your name is Judas, I'm really sorry. You know what I'm saying? I can't ask everybody's name at one time, you know? But we see the betrayal of Jesus by Judas and we're like, how in the world could you betray the Son of God? You watched him do miracles. You watched him raise the dead to life. You watched him walk on water of all things. You watched him do miracle after miracle. You even got a whole basket of bread and fish for yourself. How in the world could you betray this king? Well, if you go to John chapter 12, it said that Judas was stealing money from the treasury. Now that seems real small compared to betrayal. What's a couple of coins here and there? What's 3 pennies to $1? But what was little repeated desensitized him to the betrayal. What seemed insignificant in the grand scheme of everything corrupted his heart enough, made him sin-soaked enough that he decided 30's enough for me. If you think, listen, cultural context, 30 pieces of silver was a decent amount of money. It was about 1/3 of the year's worth of wages. But he had been walking with Jesus for 3 years. So you're saying he's worth but a fraction of that? It's because sin desensitizes us. Sin's goal is to separate you. And it'll separate you further and further because you have become more and more desensitized the more you choose to walk in it. The more you choose to partner with it, the more desensitized you become to the leading of the Holy Spirit. Worship team, if you'll come and join me. It goes on to say that God responds to Cain. It says, and the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Verse 13 is Cain's response. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. When you study the Bible, this is actually what they believe to be the first speech man made to God. And it's a complaint. Par for the course of what we do. You know what I mean? His first response to God, that's too much. I think that punishment is probably too big. That does not fit the crime of what I've done. He immediately starts to complain to God. Then he even, you can almost feel the petty and the finishing of the response. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold. Man, I threw myself off with vengeance, you know what I'm saying? Shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. You know, I've said it once, and if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, probably every time I preach. If there is a name dropped in the Bible, it's probably important. If there's a place mentioned, there's probably some significance linked to it. And so he says that he goes to the land of Nod. Now, I'm sure in my country twang, probably not even saying it the correct way, but to me, it looks like Nod. And Nod is actually even further east from where Adam and Eve left the garden. When they left the garden, when they were exiled, it said that they went east of Eden. So he is now exiled from that place, and he has to go further east. And they believe that he would have ended up in this place, which would be somewhat modern-day Iraq. And some scholars actually believe that it's in Nod that Babylon was formed. It was in the place of Nod that Babylon began to take root. So why is Nod significant? Well, the word Nod means wandering. It's actually a Hebrew wordplay for the word vagabond, a wanderer, a person that has no home, a place that has nowhere for you to rest. It's a place for wandering people. It's a place for people to go who are searching, but they can't find anything, and some of them don't even really know that they're searching. Cain's sin separated him from this God. This God that cared so deeply about him. This God that cared so deeply about every detail of his life. His sin has separated him. It said that he left the presence of the Lord. He left the presence. When I was studying for this and I read that line, it just hit me. I hope that there is nothing in me that would cause me to leave that presence. I hope that I don't ever entertain anything in my life that would cause separation enough that I'm no longer in his presence. But I hope I never make as bad of a decision that I would be separated from his presence. I just am curious tonight, have you ever been lost? I'm not talking about spiritual. Like, have you ever physically been lost before? My freshman year of college, my first semester, I had a friend from high school named Bobby. And Bobby called me one Saturday morning. He's like, hey, I have got the most random tickets ever. Would you want to go watch Kentucky basketball at Rupp Arena? Not a Kentucky fan. Not really a big basketball fan. But I was 18. Why not? You know what I'm saying? Like, sure, let's go. I didn't realize how far it was. I thought it was just right across the line. Not right across the line. If you didn't know, it's about 3 hours away. Well, the game didn't start till 8 p.m. Eastern. And so, that's a long haul, and it's going to be a late night. We made a fatal error. We didn't bring chargers. So about an hour back into the drive, now I don't know if you've ever driven to Lexington. There ain't nothing on the roads. This is the only time I've ever been. Probably won't ever go back. Nothing. There's not even street lights. It was so dark. Both of our phones died. And then his gas light came on. And I'm like Pastor Jim, I like control. I wish I was driving. But we were in Bobby's 1998 Honda station wagon looking thing. And I started sweating. Because there's a good chance if the gas light's on, we're within miles of being out. And I don't even think he's probably not even got a gas can. I'm thinking of the word, like, we're going to get kidnapped out here. We were lost. So his genius idea is, well, obviously, it is pretty genius. The next road sign that has a gas station, we'll stop there. So the next road sign, there it goes, and it has the little arrow and says point however many miles. We get off, we go to the gas station. Gas station's shut down. Shut down, like abandoned. There weren't even gas pumps. Lost. I was panicking. We don't have any way to call. Worried. And he's like, well, do we go back to the interstate? Do we just... And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what to do. So we leave the gas station, and instead of risking the interstate and getting stuck, we were like, well, let's just drive down this road. And I swear we drove for years. Pitch black, middle of nowhere, Kentucky. Scared for my life. And I'm thinking, we're about to run out of gas and I'm going to get stranded and nobody's going to find us. I mean, think about worst possible horror movie. And then finally in the distance, we see lights. Gas station lights, baby. The Chevron was on. So we pull up to the gas station, they're closed. I mean, and the panic was awful. But you know what they did have? They had an outlet right next to the pump. I did have a block charger. I didn't have a car charger. So we were able to charge our phone enough to find a way. But I'm telling you, I just finished reading the Lord of the Rings books, and one of the quotes people quote all the time out of it is, not all those who are wander are lost. No, like we were flat out lost. We pulled up the GPS. We were in the middle of nowhere. There was no wandering to what we were doing. It was just absolutely lost in the middle of nowhere. Now, we were able to find a gas. Obviously, I'm here in the flesh. So, we were able to find, there's one just right around the corner that we were able to get, and it was open. We weren't wandering, we were lost. I wonder how many of us are wandering, but we're actually not really sure if we're lost or not. We're just hoping if we can get to the next spot, maybe it'll be enough to pull me back in. If I can get to the next promise, maybe it'll be the thing that pulls me out. But what we've not realized is that we're not traveling through Nod. What we've actually done is settled in Nod. We've allowed the place of Nod, the place of wandering, to actually become our identity. Like Cain, he was a wanderer. Now, when I think of people wandering, I immediately think of the author of the book, Moses. He flees Egypt after murdering an Egyptian, and he finds himself tending a flock of sheep, and he is wandering through the desert with them. But somehow in the desert, there's a burning bush there. Then I think of the Israelites who he wrote the book to. What did they do in the desert for 40 years? Wandered. But somehow in their wandering, there was manna for them. There was a cloud by day and fire by night. I just want to speak to some people in the room that feel like you're wandering. Feel like maybe there's no hope. Maybe you're ready to just be done. You don't even feel like it's worth the effort anymore because you feel lost in it. And I'm not even necessarily talking about sin. Yes, I am, but I'm also talking about people you're trying to find maybe the thing that fulfills you. And you just feel like you're wandering, and it feels never ending, and it feels like I have no roadmap. I have no idea where to go or which direction to walk in. But I want to encourage you tonight. God knows exactly where to find you. If he can get a burning bush to Moses, he can get you what you need. If he can deliver manna to the Israelites in the middle of nowhere, what can he do for you? I've come to encourage you. You may be wandering, but God knows exactly where you are, and he knows exactly what you need. He knows the thing to get you to your next place. But the best part about God is he's not interested in just getting you there. He's interested in getting you to him. And when he comes through for you, he is way better than we could have ever imagined. Well, I thought he threw Cain out. Yeah, he did, but he put a mark on him. He separated Cain from his presence, but he made sure he'd never be killed. Even in Adam and Eve's sin, one of my favorite moments in the Bible is it says, when he put them out of the garden, what did he do first? He clothed them. Put clothes on him. That's how much he cares for you. That even in your sin-soaked state, he's just hoping you'll look his way. That even in your worst season of wandering, His hope was put in the seed of Eve, that Jesus would come to pull you out of your wandering. And that all through the seasons of your life, he has been waiting in every season, in every dry season, every fruitful season. And all he wants to do is for you to look at him so that he can pull you out of it. We serve a God that doesn't leave you in your wandering, but he picks you up out of it. But he doesn't just pick you up and hope you figure it out. He gives you a plan and a future. He gives you a purpose, and he gives you his spirit to fulfill it in your life. So tonight you might be wandering. Tonight you might be lost. But he knows exactly where you are. And he'll get you exactly what you need. With every head bowed and eye closed across this room tonight.